This is 40K Today. You think a new edition every few years is cool? We do a new edition every day, except Sundays. Sundays we play.
Hello and welcome to 40K Today. This is your daily 15-minute news, views, and interview show that covers the entire hobby of Warhammer 40,000. I'm your host, John Damaris, and today on the program, Nick Nanavati is back, and what sage advice does this 40K coach have for getting ready to hit the ground running with the new edition? Well, tune in to find out. But before we get there, Tanya Gates sits down with Kyle from Gear Guts Mek Shop to share how it all came to be. But first, let's see what's going on in the 41st millennium. Some interesting information is coming out about 9th edition. Here are a few highlights that I picked up from the good folks at Goonhammer, which, by the way, is one of the best places on the internet for long-form deep dives into 40K subjects. They have an article over there now tracking all the changes that have been sort of confirmed by devs, etc., for 9th edition, and you should check it out for sure. I'm just going to list a few of the highlights. Link, as always, will be in the show notes. Deathwatch is getting a major update pretty soon after 9th drops. That's good news indeed for all of us Deathwatch lovers. Pro tip, if you guys didn't know this, Deathwatch was the first army I bought when I came back to 40K. Old Space Marines will continue to be supported, so you don't have to worry about your old Marines being pushed aside by the Primaris. They'll still be totally supported by GW, which is cool. The Forge World indexes are getting a full rewrite, and the GW rules team is taking over the writing of those rules. That's big news. That's actually amazing because it should bring the Forge World units back into like more equilibrium with the rest of the game, which I think is going to be really good overall. And command points will now be based on your army size and not on detachments, which is also an excellent change for those of us that love small elite armies like Custodes or Grey Knights. So again, that was just a little tip of the iceberg as to what some of the changes that have come about are. You should definitely check out that Goonhammer article to learn more. We are running a poll right now on the 40K Today Facebook page and looking to answer this question. Will the new edition of Warhammer 40K fix imbalances within the game? We've got a massive response to this, hundreds of votes, and at the moment, 56% say yes, they think 9th is looking good to address balance. One of my favorite comments was done by Wesley. He says, the only thing I wish I would change is that character bundles that effectively take a 4x6 table down to a 12-inch by 12-inch box of crap trying to get every reroll possible. I think making it so commanders passing their reroll abilities to maybe one unit anywhere on the table using long-distance communication would be both more thematic and bring the game back to using the entire board. Wesley, I don't disagree. I think that's great feedback. You should send it to the devs. All right, let's get on with the show. 40K Today's own Tanya Gates sat down with Kyle Reiki of Gear Guts Mek Shop. You might be wondering, how does someone start something as cool as that? Lucky for you, Tanya asked that very question, and also about the creative process to make such cool stuff.
All right, Kyle, thanks for coming on the program.
Glad to be here.
So I'm super excited that we get to talk about your amazing models, and like the scale of some of them is just absolutely mind-blowing. But I was just wondering, how did you get started with your amazing 3D printed creations?
That is a long story. So the short end of it was I didn't like how long it took Games Workshop to make the models. And I started working last year to say, what happens if I make them faster? And suddenly I realized I could. And then it kind of got a little stupid. And now I'm making a 4-foot tall Imperator Titan.
A 4-foot tall Titan.
Its shoulders, you'll able to play Kill T-Bond.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what exactly it is that you do at Gear Guts.
I design 3D printable files for either FDM, so plastic printed ones, or resin printers, of orcs in all shapes and sizes, which I've nicknamed bruisers. They're all true scale, so they're bigger than Games Workshop models. They are beefier, angrier, and, well, massive.
Yes, and if any of the viewers haven't seen, these models are super characterful. Like you look at one of these models and you're like, oh yeah, that's totally a Gear Guts orc. How did you develop that style?
I wanted to avoid the classic ones where they were little back problem issues. So in doing so, they became beefy, thick boys. They are all very dense, very solid. I fixed the spine issues. I gave them way too much muscle. They look like they can rip the treads off of a rhino and whip someone to death with it.
I absolutely love that. To me, when I look at these models, they are exactly what you would expect orcs to be. And you do some like crossover orcs with other factions. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've been recently starting to do these little side projects. So I've done Crusaders and Guards so far. The Crusaders are these bruisers in Space Marine style armor. They are converted up design wise to the extreme. I've done the same thing with Guard, where I've made actually like a quarter of the codex, apparently, in like 2 weeks or less. It was a little silly. Of these orcs dressed up and geared up like guardsmen. I've even done a few little crafty goblins. Well, I'll let you guess what those guys are supposed to be.
And these guard in particular, you have a very awesome regimental name for them. And what is that?
I've been nicknaming them the Death Corps, but I also know that some other companies out there have produced the same things. So I'm going to be looking for a different name to officially call them. But they are definitely they got power shovels.
I love it. Everything that you produce is it still has that sort of like orc whimsy. It just always looks a little bit more dangerous. So tell us a little bit about how your Patreon works.
So my Patreon is basically set up for those who want to participate in 3D printing. I have two tiers currently that really matter, a $10 and $20 tiers that gives you access to files that I produce basically nonstop. This month has been, well, today's 19th, there's been 19 different units released already. So a lot of files. If you sign up for the $10 tier, you get access to those right away. If you sign up for the $20 tier, you also get a commission style tier. And then there's a bunch of other benefits built into it. But it's basically saying, here's files, print stuff, have a full army, never wait for the extended period the Games Workshop normally requires you wait for to get new stuff.
I love that. And you have like a little community sort of built up around your Patreon as well. And I remember that you showed me that one of your patrons actually made like a unit to sort of embody you on the table.
Oh yeah, they are super supportive. We have I think 160 people signed up currently. I've set up through Discord so that way they can chat amongst themselves. A lot of them are super supportive. So if there's any technical issues, rule issues, or anything like that, there's already a conversation about it, which makes it's a very healthy environment. I like it.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for stopping in today, Kyle. And I'm sure that we'll be hearing a lot more from you later.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Wow and whatnot.
That was a lot of fun. Thanks, Tanya. Next up on the show, Nick Nanavati, 40K superstar and coach at the Art of War. Swing by to impart some wisdom. It's our coaching tip of the week. Today's episode of 40K Today is brought to you by Frontline Gaming. Frontline Gaming is a one-stop shop for all your Warhammer hobby needs, discounted products, American-made gaming mats and terrain, and a full line of miniatures painting service and daily hobby content. And this can all be found at frontlinegaming.org. Welcome back. You might be wondering, once again, what kind of coaching tip can we give if we don't even know what the rules are going to be for the new edition? Well, if you were wondering, you are very lucky because today we have got 40K player extraordinaire and all-around great guy, Nick Nanavati, to swing by to answer that very question. All right, Mr. Nanavati, let's talk about 9th edition. First, let me ask, before we get into our coaching tip of the week, are you pumped for 9th edition?
I'm so pumped. I'm ready for events to happen again. I'm ready for COVID to be done. I'm ready for a new edition. I'm ready to just start 40K up and invigorate my passion, all that. I'm super pumped.
Right, because you're actually at the heart of it. You're a 40K super fan. I don't know if people realize that you since you were little Nick, 12 years old or something.
I've been playing 40K since I was 10 years old. I love it. I think back on it, it's almost like a weird obsession, but also now it's my lifestyle. So, but yeah, absolutely, 40K super fan all the way. I'm craving this thing.
Okay, so let's break it down for people who are getting ready for the new edition. Right, they're super excited. Nobody knows what's going to be in the new edition, so how can they prepare? What's your number one tip if somebody wants to hit the ground running in the new edition?
So there's two things I want to cover today. I'm glad you brought that up. Everyone's super excited, but nobody knows what's in 9th edition. That's the key word right there. A lot of people were getting previews, Games Workshop putting out tidbits. They're doing community interactions on Twitch and whatnot. That's great. And we're learning cool rules, like terrain rules are going to be different. They're going to be existent. I've heard rumors of like no more trapping stuff in combat. I have no idea if that's true or not. But the point is, the only thing we know for sure is basically the codexes and the psychic wakings are valid. So we have all of what the armies do more or less. We don't know any of the mechanics. So a lot of people are saying like assault armies are dead because there's no more this, or shooting armies are dead because there's no more that. We don't know anything. You can't make those assumptions. You're putting your 8th edition framework with this one rule that changed, like tank shooting into combat. You can't just take 8th edition and make tank shooting into combat. That doesn't work. It's 9th edition. We just don't know anything about that. So contextually, we don't have much to go off on, which I guess is why you have me on here. As far as what can you do to hit the ground running when 9th edition hits, you can't work on your tactics. You can't work on your list construction. We have no idea what anything does. What you can work on is your fundamental skills as a gamer, being able to identify threats, what your army's trying to do, come up with strategies, what your opponent's army trying to do, understand those relationships, and then come up with a plan of action. So it's more of a macro level discussion, which is something we talk about a lot on the Art of War 40K podcast. Basically, that episode 1 stuff. What is your army trying to do? And while the armies, what needs to be done might change respective to 9th edition if we get new missions and whatnot, what's important to remember is it's about how you think about the game on a super high level, not like the minutia of this costs this many points or this is how to trap something. That's all technical tactics. We're working on the overall conceptual strategy.
Okay, so thinking about that, thinking about what you've brought up here, do you think this would be a good time for people to invest in maybe learning the basics of the math if they're a fairly new player, maybe understanding that a 1 in 6 is around a 17% chance, and understanding that going from a 6+ to hit to a 5+ to hit is the same 17% gain that you gain going from like a 2 to a 3, but you double the number of hits. So there's different ways to look at it, right? So those sort of raw mechanical things that happen in the game, a lot of the best players sort of have an innate understanding of it. And
Right,
investing
definitely.
a little time to learn all the mathematics that are sort of the basis of the game, this might be a perfect time to sort of, because it's hard to take that time to do that normally, because you just like there's so many things to learn, and you got to learn what everybody's stuff does. You got to learn like what are the meta lists, like you got to learn how ITC works. Well, maybe now's the time to learn like what are some of the core fundamentals of the game.
Right,
like,
that's a great point, John, because like the math is something I take for granted a lot of time. Like I'm not a freaking human calculator, but little stuff like you said, the odds of 1 in 6 is about 17, 16, 17, one of those, and then you can just double it every time. You get 1/3 of, like you need 5s and 6s, it's 1/3. You need 4s, 5s, and 6s, it's 1/2. Then you want to go a step further and talk about rerolls. So like, what are the odds that you hit something on 4s rerolling 1s? It's about 58%. What about 3s rerolling? It's about 78%. It's really easy to just calculate that and just commit it to memory. And then now you get yourself to the table and you can do quick math on the fly and understand how to make these kinds of educated decisions.
Yeah, it just speeds up your thought process, right? And something we talk about all the time is muscle memory. And the more things that are automatic for you, the less you have to sort of devote cycles to at the table. And there you go. So getting the math down it sounds like a simple thing, but you'd be surprised how many players you talk to that sort of inform you that they don't really understand the fundamentals of the math just by how they sort of describe their thought process. It's kind of interesting. So
yeah, no, I really couldn't agree more. And even just understanding like aggressive play versus defensive play, there's so much you can just study and glean, and it carries over. Even though 8th edition might be a totally different rule set from 9th, even though from what Games Workshop kind of alluded to, it's going to be more like an 8.5. Nonetheless, learning play styles, identifying yourself as a player, just working on yourself as an overall gamer, that's what you can do right now to really improve and get ready for 9th.
All right, I think that's great advice. Thanks, Nick.
No problem, Mr. Damaris. Thank you for having me.
That's Nick, and as always, we appreciate some tips to help all of us normal people get better at the game. Before we say goodbye, it's that special time of the day. Get hyped. It's time for Model of the Day.
It's the model of the day,
The model of the day. The model of the day.
This week we're actually looking at a listener-submitted model. This is a Contemptor, I believe. You have to bear with me. It kind of looks like a Redemptor, but I think it's a Contemptor Dreadnought. And Sam has achieved a deep, rich red on his Blood Angels Contemptor. It's darker than most of the other Blood Angels we have seen, but it really allows the gold accents to shine. This is a simple and elegant color scheme that is crisp and very technically well done. Sam has a great understanding of contrast, and we see that in the deep shadows and bright edge highlights of this model. The link, as always, is in our show notes. If you have a model that you want us to feature in the show, or have you just seen something that just absolutely causes your draw to drop, please let us know. Look us up on 40K Today on Facebook and send us a message. We're always looking for cool things to highlight, especially listener-submitted models. And that's it for today. Thanks again for joining us. A huge thanks to our content producer, Alex Boehner, our social media whiz, Tanya Gates, and our technical producer, Seamus Ronan, for all their hard work once again in putting the program together. We have been welcoming a ton of new people lately to the 40K Today family, and yes, we absolutely think of you all as our family. We love this game, and we know that you share that passion. So welcome and make yourself at home. And if you could leave us a review on iTunes, it would help us reach more people, and we would appreciate it very much. Also, tomorrow, don't forget to tune in to hear our best of the week. Download it via the Frontline Gaming Network or your favorite podcast player. So we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, for the 40K Today team, I'm John Damaris, and that's what's happening in 40K Today.